Okay, good evening, everyone. Hare Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitanena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we're continuing our study of Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 10. Today we're covering verses 8 through 11. These are very famous verses of the Bhagavad-Gita. It is understood by many acharyas in Bhagavad Gita that the essence of Bhagavad Gita can be found in these 4 verses. So they've become somehow historically famous. So Krishna has just said in the previous verse, Etam vibhutim yogam cha, that anyone who understands his vibhuti and yoga in truth, veti tatuta, if they understand it in truth, then they will be fixed in undeviating yoga or bhakti yoga, and they will achieve the supreme goal. So he expands on this in the first of the 4 verses, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samambita. So Aham sarvasya prabhava means I am the source of generation of everything. Everything material and spiritual has its origin in God. Jamadhyasa yata. And the Vedanta Sutra opens up with a statement, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now that you have attained the human form of life, it takes a long time to get a human form of life. Not so many humans in the world. There are a lot of cockroaches and ants, and of course that is also going down, thanks to humans. But compared to other species of life, humans are very less. So that means for the soul to occupy the human species is a very rare attainment. And so atato brahma jignasa, now that you finally got a human form of life, now this is the time for inquiry into Brahman. Because that is the only thing that differs between human species and animal species. That humans can ask higher questions. Brahma Valoka Vishanam Muda Apadeva. It is described in Srimad Bhagavatam that the Lord created all the various species, but even after creating all the various species to house the conditioned souls, Atushta Hridaya, his heart was not satisfied, and then he generated the human species. And when the human species was generated, Muda Apadeva, the Deva, God, he became happy or satisfied. Why? Brahma Avaloka Dishanam, because in the human species they have the intelligence to inquire about Brahman. So now that you have human form of life, you're supposed to be doing spiritual investigation. So if your life is not for spiritual investigation, then it's just animal life. Dharma, what is that? Dharmahina Pashubhi Samana. If human beings don't inquire into Dharma, into higher spiritual subject matters, then they are the same as animals. Because what do the animals do? Eat, sleep, mate, and defend, right? Ahara nidra bhaya maitunamcha. That's all animals do. If anyone's ever watched Animal Planet, you'll see Animal Planet. It was a very nice show when we were growing up. We used to like to watch Animal Planet. So what they show Animal Planet, how animals are eating, how they sleep, how they mate, and how they defend. I once inquired about this. I said they should do an Animal Planet for the human beings. And then someone shot back very nicely. They said, those are all the other channels. I thought that was a very wise, it was a very good remark. Because in the other channels you watch, that's all they are showing, how they eat, how they made it. It's a very smart guy who's ever said this. So, Atato Brahma Jignasa, human form of life meant for spiritual inquiry. Into Brahman, Atato Brahma Jignasa, you should inquire into Brahman. So this is the first sutra, Vedanta Sutra. And then the second sutra says that Brahman Jamadhyasa yataha. That Brahman is the source of creation, maintenance, and destruction of everything. So Krishna is saying the same thing here, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, that he is the source of generation for everything in existence, both material and spiritual. Mata Sarvam Pravartate. By me, Sarvam Pravartate means everything is operating. So the operation of this material world, you cannot see You actually don't know how the world is functioning. It is functioning by some higher order. Just like you cannot see how your body processes food. You're only interested in one part, the eating part. And after it goes down this part, that's it. You forget about it. But there's so many things that are happening in the background for the processing of food. But we don't ever think about it. Of course, if some liver problem coming, that you go to the doctor to figure out the problem. But otherwise, it is happening by its own arrangement, or apparently so. So also like this, and you can consider the physical body like a small universe, a microcosm. And the big universe is just a macrocosm of this small universe, which is the body. So there's a huge universal body, and then there's a small universe. So this small universe is occupied by a soul. And as soon as the soul leaves that body, then immediately all the functions of the body cease, isn't it? So they appear to be operating automatically, but they're actually operating because of the presence of the soul. And if that soul departs from the body, then the body begins to cease to operate and it begins to decay. So the source of life for the body is actually consciousness. Simple. So similarly with the universal body, there's the Paramatma. He is the soul of the universe. And by his presence in the universe is operating. So Mata Sarvam Pravartate. So by him alone, Paramatma, everything in this world is operating. Or Mata Sarvam Pravartate can also mean by him alone in the form of the various avatars that come to teach about yoga, they come to teach about jnana, they come to teach about karma, these different systems by which humans can be elevated. It is he alone who has presented those systems in the form of these different avatars. For example, for Bhakti Yoga system, Narada Muni is there. He is considered as avatar of one of the Lord's powers. For these other systems also, various sages and rishis, they propagate these different systems. So they're all expansions of God. So he's saying, by me alone, all these systems also operate. If he did not appear to teach these things in the form of these rishis and bhaktas and so on, then there would be no yoga system for humanity. And then humanity would suffer. So it is by him alone that everything is operating. That is his point. Mata Sarvam Pravartate. By me alone, everything is operating. Not only the material world and all the functions that we cannot really conceive. Science is trying their best to do something, but you cannot really conceive so much. That is operating by me alone. And all these systems of true knowledge by which humans can elevate, that is also operating by me. Knowledge not given by God is not so useful. So like nowadays, there's YouTube content creators and so on that everyone's presenting some knowledge, how to improve your life in 5 easy steps and this and that. And of course, because we don't have any knowledge and we're in ignorance, so we also get bewildered by these things. If you don't know Shastra, then you also, and then you look you'll look up that video and then it'll have so many suggestions on the side, you'll check out some of the suggestions. But these things actually, this sort of thing is not very useful for the elevation of humans. At best, it is useful for helping humans maybe live a little bit more comfortably in a miserable place called the material world. That's like the best case scenario. But as far as like actual elevation of consciousness, then that is not happening by that knowledge. That knowledge has to be given by God. And the various forms of the different rishis, and these are all expansions of God propagating real knowledge. So he says, by me alone, everything is actually operating. Iti matwa, if you understand this about me, so you understand this about Krishna if you hear from some source who knows this. You have to hear from some guru, basically. If you hear from a proper guru, then they teach like this. Whatever Bhagavad-Gita is saying, they will teach like this. If you know this about me, bhajante mam, then you will do my bhajan. Bhajan means to worship Krishna. Bhajan. Chanting is bhajan. Hearing about Krishna, that is bhajan. Worshipping the deity, that is bhajan. So bhajan just means to worship. That is the meaning of the word bhajan. So bhajante mam, they worship me. Buddha bhava samavita. Such persons are Buddha. That Buddha means they are intelligent. The word Buddha means intelligence, actually, or an intelligent person. So everyone can become a Buddha. You want to be a Buddha? You want to be Buddha? You want to be a Buddha? No. The word Buddha means intelligent. You don't want to be intelligent? You want to be intelligent. So everyone should be Buddha, actually. Problem in the world today is that there isn't enough Buddhas. Too much, a lot of ignorance is there, not enough Buddhas walking around. So how do you become Buddha? Then you should perform Krishna's bhajan. That's what he's saying here. And you'll become convinced to do his bhajan if you hear from a proper source about how he's the source of everything, the origin of everything. So those who do my bhajan, they're Buddha, bhava samavita. And bhava samavita means they become infused with bhava. So the word bhava basically means love. They become infused with divine devotion to the deity, Krishna, bhava samavita. This bhava is a spiritual energy. That's why we say Hare Krishna, right? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So this word Hare refers to the spiritual energy of God. So he has a material energy that manifests this material world. So there's also another type of energy that is categorically different called spiritual energy. Technical name is Swarupa Shakti or Chit Shakti, Chit Shakti. The word Chit means spiritual energy. And this world is called Maya Shakti. So there are two different energies. So this divine love of God represented by the word Hare is part of this Chit Shakti, spiritual energy. So material energy, spiritual energy. So then the love, you can become infused with this love, bhava samavita, this divine love of God. If you do Krishna's bhajan, if you don't do Krishna's bhajan, you don't want to worship Krishna, that is also okay. But, it's not okay, but you have your choice. You can take it as you like, you can do. But if you do not do his bhajan, then you will not be Buddha. You will be ignorant, at least in the language of the Vedanta, and you have to suffer the consequences of ignorance in the form of repeated birth and death. So those are the two options, basically. Maybe not. This is not the most the nicest public relations message, but it is the message. So if you want to become a learned person, you should hear from Guru. Then you do Krishna's bhajan. You're intelligent, and you become infused with bhava, divine love of God. So what is the life of those who are infused with bhava? What is their life like? Those who have divine life. Everyone says like this. They're just like sometimes I like to go to gospel churches. Gospel music is very nice. I like gospel music. It's very nice. And they have so many songs where the whole song is just "I love you, God." That's like the whole song. But they have such beautiful voices. So they do like all these riffs, and it's very nice. I love you, God. I love you, God. They say like this. But after church is over, they go to do what? Whatever they go to do. We will not make any commentary about that. Some people are sincere. They may continue worship after they leave. But generally, religion, it so happens that most people, their spiritual thing is relegated to the church space or the temple space. And outside the church, there's some other life that's going on. So they will, I love you, God, and then afterwards go out and watch a movie. And the movie would be shooting up people and everything like that. It's like very exciting. Had nothing to do with love of God. So a little bit different life is there. So what does the life of someone who loves God actually look like? Because anyone can say, I also say, I love God. But what does the life of someone who loves God actually look like? They have the real bhava samavita. They're really infused with divine love, bhava. What does that life look like? So Krishna is describing here, Ma chitta makata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayanta shamam nityam tushanti charamanti cha. This is a very nice verse. So ma chitta means their minds are always thinking of me. Ma chitta, their consciousness is always on me. Acharya said they are always greedy for the names and the forms and the qualities and the sweetness of God. And just like your mind, when it gets fixated on some object, it becomes greedy for that object, to see it, to touch it, to smell it, to taste it, isn't it? Just like I always like to give the romantic example because it's just so easily available. If you've ever had the horrible experience of falling in love, it is actually not a very nice experience. Then you have that experience. Then you want to see the object, taste the object, touch the object. Isn't it like this? And sometimes people, when that horrible disease is very acute, then they say things like, "I can't live without you." That's such illusion. Of course you can. But they feel like this, I cannot live. They're so greedy for the object that they actually think, I cannot live without the object. So of course in the material world, that's very fake. It's just like a play. So for some time they feel that, and then, a couple weeks later, a month later, maybe 10 years later, sometimes the infatuation can last a little long. Then they say, I just don't love you anymore. Over. Why you don't love me anymore? Because I fell in love with some other. The material world is like that. But in the spiritual world, machitta magata prana bodhayanta parasparam. Machitta, so their minds are always greedy for Krishna. And here, makata prana, their prana means life air, their life, always goes towards me. Acharyas explained very nicely, this means that they cannot live without Krishna, just as a human being cannot live without food. This example is given by one of our acharyas. Anagata prana nara. Just as human beings, their prana, their life air, is sustained by anna. Anna means food. If you don't have food, then you die. Isn't it? So the devotee feels like this, without Krishna, I will die. Or another example is given, just as a fish out of water will not be able to survive. So the devotee feels, without Krishna, I will not be able to survive. That is, their mind is like this. So this is the first indication of some real, you can say I love God, but if you really love God, this is evidence. They feel like this. That is their inner life, their mental state is like this. I mean, I go to many festivals here also, I go to class here, I do so many things. But every now and then, like a good movie also, and something a little bit separate from Krishna. So got some ways to go before we can say, claim bhava samanvita. Next quality, bodhayanta parasparam, means that they mutually hear from one another the realizations that they have about Krishna. Because devotees, they all are focused on Krishna, but they all have very unique realizations. And so you want to unearth what are those realizations from, just like if you study Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is this huge work of questions and answers between devotees who are bhava samanvita. They have high level of love of God. So they're asking questions, and some of the questions seem very easy. So you may ask, don't they know that already? Why are they asking this question? Because they want to hear the realization of that devotee. Of course I know the answer. I have my own realizations about this, but I want to hear that devotee's realization. So they ask some questions just to get out their realizations. This is called guhyam akyati prichati, which means that one devotee is sharing the realizations that are hidden in the cave of his heart, guhyam. And another devotee is prichati, he's inquiring about that. What is this? So they ask some question, this question, that question, just to get the realizations out. Bodhayanta parasparam. So they do this mutually. And they hear from one another about the realizations they have about God. Very unique. Although it's the same object they're focusing on, but they have very unique realizations. Katayantash chamam nityam. And they're always doing kata about Krishna. They're always talking about Krishna. So these three things, the first one is the bhakti has different forms of practice. But of the different forms, 9 are considered supreme. And of those 9 forms, 3 of them are considered topmost. Shravanam, hearing about God, Smaranam, remembering God, and Kirtanam, doing. So those 3 forms are indicated in this verse. Machitta magata prana means their mental state. Then they're hearing from one another the realizations, that's Shravanam. And Katayantash, they're talking about God. This is Kirtanam. So, to Shanti Chadamantachar, from this they enjoy greatly. They have a nice life. Tujanti Cha means they feel very satisfied, and Ramanti Cha means they enjoy. That's it. That's all their life is. They just come gather together and just hear and chat about God. They don't even do anything else. So it's kind of mysterious, actually. And Manacharya said this is the mysterious aspect of Bhakti Yoga. That a devotee actually feels like this is enough. He doesn't have to do anything else. You can just hear a chant, remember, he is happy. Can you do like that? You will be happy. Just hear a chant, remember. The end. I hear a chant, remember. Also go do a little shopping. See a little movie. Go hang out, do a little ping pong with my friends. It's my personal sense gratification. Do this, do that. You don't feel happy, but these devotees, just by that, they feel their life is maintained. This is love of God is like this. Even when they're persecuted, so many examples are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. Even when they're persecuted, as long as they can hear and chant, remember about God, they don't even feel that is a disturbance. If someone was trying to kill me, that would be a big disturbance in my life for sure. Here, the devotees don't even feel that is a big disturbance. As long as I can hear about God, that is the important thing. I can hear, I can chant about Krishna. That is, persecution is going on. That is unavoidable in the material world, actually. So, the very high level of consciousness. This is the Bhava Samambita people. Tujhanti Chadamanti Chad, they satisfied, they get pleasure from this. So how do they finally attain Krishna? So this is their life. This is the life of such persons who love God. So how do they finally obtain Krishna? So then this is mentioned in verse 10. Tesham, this is also very famous. All these verses are very famous, but this one particularly is quoted a lot. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadadmi buddhi yogam tam niramam upayanti te. So unto those persons, Tesham, unto those persons, so not everyone, unto a category of people, unto those persons, Satatam Yuktanam, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, who are constantly doing my bhajan with love. So Satatam Yuktanam basically means like all the time. Like, okay, you have to sleep a few hours. Then after that, just doing Krishna bhajan. All the time they're just doing that. Satatan Yuktanam, Bhajatam Priti. With love, they're doing this bhajan. But to these people who are like this, basically like 24 hours a day, just like absorbed, they're chanting, they're hearing, taking prasadam, being with the devotees. The Dadmi Buddhi Yogam Tam, then unto these people I give Buddhi Yoga, I give them the intelligence, Yenamam Puyantite, by which they can obtain me in my full spiritual form. So Buddhi Yoga means, well, it literally translates as the yoga of intelligence. But this Buddhi Yoga refers to something different than intelligence, which is a product of the material world. Intelligence is one of the material elements, according to Sankhya system. It is generated from the material natures, the gunas of material nature, so sattva, rajas, tamas. And then they combine, they generate different products of nature. And one of the elements of nature is buddhi, is intelligence. So when here Krishna says that Dadmi Buddhi, I give buddhi, it does not mean the intelligence that is a product of material nature. Because that, everyone already has that. I mean, it may not be so manifest to some of us, but everyone has buddhi. Some intelligence is there. You have some intelligence. Yes, some intelligence. Some ability to discern different things. Like I said, and nowadays you may not be able to see so much evidence of that, but everyone has some buddhi. But that buddhi is a product of material nature. So when Krishna says, I give buddhi yoga, this buddhi is something that is different from the buddhi yoga, the buddhi that is there, that we already have as a product of the material nature. It is categorically different. It's something part of the spiritual energy. He gives something spiritual inside the function of the senses and the mind of the person, this devotee, by which they obtain Krishna fully. It's very abstract, actually. It's very hard to picture it, actually, because you have to have kind of an experience of the spiritual something. Anyway, you can take from Shastra, of course, but you only know material intelligence. You've never heard of like a spiritual intelligence. Of course, people say I'm spiritual, they think spiritually and all that, but that is also part of the material nature. That is not spiritual thing. To have the spiritual something, this is something given by Krishna, the Dadmi Buddha Yoga. Krishna gives only spiritual thing. Krishna doesn't give a material thing. So Buddha Yoga here refers to an energy coming from the spiritual world that enters inside the apparatus that is his body and mind, and it kind of takes over the functions of the body and mind of the devotee. Just like in the material world, sometimes people feel that they've been swept up by an energy. Just like, have you ever been so angry you just felt like you were just overcome by like an angry energy? Or I can use a romantic example again, love, and you become overcome. You have this experience in the material where you become overcome by some energy, and it just takes over the functions of everything. Your intelligence doesn't work in the same way. In your mind, you have this experience, I'm sure, with material things. Anger is not one of my big issues. I have other big issues, but anger is not one of them. But I have this one distinct memory growing up of being really angry at my brother. I forgot what he did, something petty probably, but somehow I was really upset about it. And we were staying in this apartment that had like a garage, kind of like a building. And he must have like hit me or something. He was running around the garage. And he was like right here, and I was like here, and I was trying to catch him. We were just running like this. But I was so angry, I started running I felt like I was running as fast as a cheetah. Because I was like furious. So even though he was like literally on the opposite side of this huge pillar that was dividing us, I was like running so fast that I just caught him. And I probably beat him. We were fighting. But I always had, I don't know, this sticks out in my mind, but I just remember having the feeling of being overcome by like intense anger. So like this, or someone is overcome by an energy, some love. You become love, and even though all your friends are wisely telling you this is not a good idea, then you say something foolish like the heart wants what the heart wants. You watch too many movies. So then you like literally overcome. You actually can't help yourself. You're overcome by it. So that is a material thing. So perhaps by a parallel, this is not a perfect fit, but there's a spiritual energy, and the devotee becomes overcome or kind of uplifted by this spiritual energy. And their intelligence works in a different way because of being informed by this spiritual energy. The Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam, and in this way they know how to obtain Krishna. So that's the best I can do to explain it, because it's actually a little abstract. But there's a spiritual energy, and when that spiritual energy is, when there's an ingress of that spiritual energy more and more by practice of bhakti yoga, then that energy starts to take over the functions of the mind, intelligence, senses, and they function in a different way. Maybe a simple way of thinking is that now your mind, senses, intelligence functions usually in terms of exploitation, right? How I can be happy. And what do I have to do to become happy? So you look at the world in terms of that exploitation tendency. Well, if there's spiritual energy coming in, you don't see the world like that anymore. You see it in another way, how it can serve. It's a little hard to explain this one, but this is the Acharya's explanation. So finally, the last verse here, this is a very nice verse. Tesham evanukam partam aham agyanajam tama nashanyami atma bhavasto gyanadipena basuta. So Tesham eva anukampa artam. So Krishna says, unto them, eva anukampa artam. I have the desire to show mercy. Anukampa artam means the purpose of showing them mercy. Showing who mercy? These type of devotees, these people, not everyone. Krishna has already mentioned this in chapter 9, that he has a special predilection for his bhaktas. In 929, for example, samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti napriya. He says, when I look at the jivas of this world, I see them all with equal vision. No one is a friend, no one is an enemy. Someone does some nice pious activity, it's not like Krishna's very moved by that. They do something like just nasty, vicious, that also doesn't disturb him. He's just neutral. The material energy will take care of them. You don't have to think about it. He says, but ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. But those who are my devotees, they do my bhajan, then I'm attached to them and they're attached to me. So he's already mentioned that he has a special predilection for his bhaktas. And he also says, Yoga Shema Vahami, I personally carry what my devotees need. I bring that to them, and whatever they have, I maintain that. I personally do that. Yoga Shema Vahamya means I personally maintain them. They're not maintained through some others, so I personally take charge of them. So he's already mentioned in chapter 9 in several places his personal predilection for his bhaktas. So here, this is also indicating Tesha unto them. Tesha means unto them, so it means whoever he's talking about. And here he's talking about the bhaktas, the Bhava Samavita people. I desire to show them special mercy. So what is that special mercy? Aham agyanajam tamaha nashanyami. I destroy the ignorance. I destroy the darkness born of ignorance. So what is that darkness born of ignorance? Different charts give explanation, but basically the darkness born of ignorance is unawareness of Bhagavan, like not seeing him face to face. Don't you want to see God face to face? If that's a possibility. First of all, I don't know if that's a possibility, but if it is a possibility, then okay, why not? So this ignorance is being oblivious of Bhagavan, the beginningless non-awareness of God. This is the ignorance, the darkness born of ignorance. So he says, Aham Nasham, I destroy that ignorance. How do you destroy that ignorance? Atma Bhava Sto, I enter inside their, Atma Bhava means I enter inside their, Atma it was translated as intelligence, or it's also translated as just their body, their mind, their senses. I enter inside of all of that. How? Jnana Dipena Bhasvata. I love this. Bhasvata is translated with the glow, with the glow of the lamp of knowledge. Jnana Dipena, just like you see if you come for artis, you see the Pujari offering a lamp, a fire to the deity. So it's called Deepa. Deepa is like a lamp. So the lamp of fire has a nice glow to it. It's very illuminating. So with the glow from the lamp of knowledge, and that knowledge is not, again, it's not knowledge of the material world. It is a knowledge of the spiritual domain that glows inside the faculties, and all ignorance is put aside, and they can see me face to face. That is a special mercy that is given to a devotee. They see God, basically. Obviously, if you look at the lives of saints, they're the evidence that there's something transcendent to existence. Because right now, if we're hearing without that experience, it is just like nice theoretical knowledge at best. Otherwise, we have not had experience with God like this. So we'll go on with our regular life. But if you look at saints, and you can read about so many saints, of course, in India, and especially in many Vaishnava traditions, and there are so many saints you can read about. They're like literally unlimited. That is the specialty of Indian culture, basically, that they have so many saints, and they documented that. In the Western world, they don't have so many, but they have a few reputed ones, huh? A lot of? Yes, they like to document the foolish people. So this is one of the problems with the Western world. One time, Srila Prabhupada was talking to an anthropologist, and the anthropologist said to Prabhupada, he said, Swamiji, because that's how he was kind of affectionately referred to, we like to study the uncivilized people. And Prabhupada said that is a difference between you and us, that we like to study the civilized people. He said the primitive people, because we like to study the primitive people. As far as that's the difference between us, we study the civilized people from the Shastras, the saints. So that is the difference. If you keep hearing about these foolish people, you'll become a fool. That's inevitable. Actually, this is a side point. It's not so important, but yeah, it's not that we have so much control of our mind that when you watch something, and even if you know that it's foolish, that you can't get contaminated by it. If you watch something foolish, even if you know it is foolish, and you're thinking that you're protecting yourself from getting affected, actually you're getting affected by it. It is unavoidable. Because the mind is not that, the mind is like putty, like clay. So whatever input you put into the mind, it just starts shaping itself like that. Even if your intelligence is able to discern that this is this and that, but your mind itself just takes the shape of whatever you're allowing to come into it. So even if you watch foolishness and so on, you can recognize it for what it is. Still, it impacts you. And if you watch it long enough, you become a fool. It's inevitable. That's how it works. But if you hear about saintly persons, you want to become like that. There's this one movie that we all like to watch here. I've seen it at least half a dozen times, called Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. It's an old movie, like 1980s. It's a movie about Saint Francis of Assisi. Very inspiring movie. And you can see there's like a turning point where he has some sort of realization. And his life completely changes from that. And then he creates this brotherhood of like saintly persons and so on. And when you read about their lives, it is indicating something transcendent, or at least something interesting. You have so many universities now, they have what's called a divinity school, where they study these religious personalities. Most of them are atheists, actually, or many of them are atheists, but they find it so fascinating to read about these people and their lives and what they taught and so on. So these saintly persons are indicative that there may be something actually transcendent. So here this verse is saying, I enter to show them special mercy. I enter with the glow of knowledge, which is basically the perception of myself, and remove all the darkness of ignorance about me. And their lives are completely transformed. If you read about these people, you become amazed, actually. The sort of austerities they perform. I mean, the things they would give up, the renunciation usually, is like actually is a little bit unbelievable. You don't believe. Even Prabhupada's story. Prabhupada's story is quite unbelievable. 70-year-old man coming to America with no money, with just a briefcase of books, with the idea of starting a worldwide movement to spread Christian consciousness in the heart of New York City. That sounds like foolishness. If you have to like take all logic into consideration and so on, that just sounds like craziness. On the way over, he has like 2 heart attacks. You know, that's enough to 2 heart attacks. That's it. All right, I did the best I could. If you read about Prabhupada's life, there's one book is there, Prabhupada Limamrita. You read about his life, it's really extraordinary. It's kind of unbelievable, actually. Probably after 100 years, people would not believe the story also. It would just be something like legend. And they would not believe that it actually, someone can do like that. Anyway, there are many stories of these saintly persons. If you study them, then you'll get a little confidence that these statements of Bhagavad-Gita, there might be something to them. That there is something transcendent, and the soul can connect with that transcendence and exhibit a different quality of life that is literally superhuman. Or you can call it transhuman. It transcends just human nature as something divine. If you don't read about them, then the intellectual thing will be hard it's too abstract. You will not really be able to appreciate it so much. So you have to hear these verses in connection with reading about saintly persons. And if you hear about the lives of saintly persons, then you start to get a little conviction about perhaps there is actually an existence of something divine and deep. And then, of course, if you hear about those things, you want to become like that also. That is actually, not only will you want to become, you will become like that. Just because that's where you're aligned to come in. So that's it. That's the summary of Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell, according to many Vaishnava acharyas. So we'll stop there for now. Are there any comments or questions about anything that we've spoken? These abstract topics that everything is okay? Clear? Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah, this is actually a very fascinating question. Where does energy come from? It's fascinating because, well, I've heard that science doesn't really know how to define energy. And where does it actually come from? For Vedanta, energy is eternally existing, as God is eternally existing. So I like to give this example. When there's a sun, the sun ray coexists with the existence of the sun. There's not that first there was like the sun globe, whatever you would call it. And then gradually the sun ray came out. There was sun and there was sun ray. They are coexisting together. So God is like the sun, and then he has these different energies, and they're all co-eternal. So it's not like first there was God and then the energies came later. They're co-eternal. And Krishna mentions this throughout the Gita in different places. Bhagavad-Gita 2.12, for example, Bhagavad-Gita 13.20, there are different places where this is mentioned. So as far as the Bhagavad-Gita is concerned, the energy is eternal. So, where does it come from? You can say it comes from God in the same way that you would say that the sun ray comes from the sun, but it is co-eternal. It is not that first God and then energy. They're eternally existing together. So, and then we hear from Bhagavatam that there are three categories of energy. Broadly speaking, three categories of energy. There's spiritual energy, there's material energy, and then there's a soul energy or consciousness. So these are the three broad categories of energy, and all of them are eternally existing. So the soul energy is called as the Tatastha Shakti. It means marginal energy. It is an energy, just like when you go to a beach, there's that line between the shore and the land and the ocean. It's like this little, that's also itself kind of a fascination, how the ocean just stops right at the shoreline and doesn't go past it. So that line is called Tata. It means like this line between the ocean and the land. I don't know how do you call that? Not the beach, the line part. Line just doesn't sound eloquent enough. I was looking for a better word than line. There's a better word. I can't think of the word. The boundary. Yeah. Well, it's the line between the ocean and the beach, or the land part. There must be a word. No, there's a more eloquent way of expressing this. In any case, so that line is sometimes covered by the ocean, and sometimes when the ocean recedes, it's just on the land part. So it's neither ocean part or land part. It's like in its own category. So the soul is called the Tatastha Shakti of God, the marginal energy. He is neither in the spiritual energy category nor in the material energy category. He's in his own category. So being marginal or in the middle, that soul is sometimes influenced by material energy and can be also influenced by spiritual energy. That's why it's called as marginal. Just like that ocean tide sometimes comes over and then sometimes it recedes like this. So this is, anyway, so your question was, where does energy come from? In short, it comes from God. Everything comes from God. But it doesn't come from God in the sense that he generated it out of nothing. Like first it was God and then he brought forth the energies, like in the creation story of Christianity or something like that. All these energies are eternally existing. And they have a certain relationship with one another. So that's what the Shastras usually try to talk about. They're co-eternal.
But when you are overtaken by energy, where that's triggered somehow.
Well, actually, okay, so when we're overcome by a particular energy, what triggers that, or where does it come from? Where it triggers it? Actually, the body itself is compositional material. It comes from material energy. So when we say that we're overcome by material energy, that's not surprising because the consciousness is already in a body that it's itself a composite of material energy. The body itself, the mind is material energy, the intellect is material energy, and the environment that we're around is all material energy. So the soul in the material world is actually at every point being moved by material energy. Therefore, there is actually no freedom from the soul. This is one of the big illusions of modern man. Krishna speaks about this so nicely in Bhagavad-Gita 3:27 is a very popular verse. Pakritihi kriyamana nigunai karmani sarvasha. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Krishna says of the soul, ahankara vimudhatma. So the veritably foolish person, foolish atma, why is he foolish? Ahankara, he has his ahankara. Ahankara means ego, which is also material energy. It is also a product of material energy. Due to his false ego, he thinks that I am doing everything, when actually everything is being moved by material forces. Basically the gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So where is it generated? The soul is already in material energy. And the whole environment that we're experiencing now is also material energy. So we're being moved. Where does it come from? It's always been there. and the soul has been somehow associated with this material energy. And since being associated with it, it's been moved by material forces since the time of association. It's been moved by, so even our thoughts, that is I have to write this down actually, but I remember one person came here and was talking about, because we were mentioning some point about how you have to follow Shastra, quoting some verse from Gita. He said, well, where's the room for free thinking? That's always a concern when you hear you got to follow some religious book. That's a natural concern. I get all these statements in English. They have so much history baggage. So he said, where is the room for free thinking? So I said, bro, there's no question of free thinking. Because whatever experience you have in this world, that is deposited as an impression in your mind. The experience itself is something material, and that experience leaves an imprint in your mind, which is also material. And those imprints in your mind, they influence you to do a certain thing in the future, right? So I gave a simple example. When I was 9, I almost drowned twice in the same week. So that was a material experience. Drowning is a material experience. And I left an imprint in my mind of that drowning experience. So in the future, whenever I saw water, that triggered that impression in my mind, and I superimposed it onto that present situation. I don't want to touch the water. I want to go near the water. So that decision not to go near water is being influenced by these impressions of a past experience. So that's just a simple example that happened in this life. But all of our thoughts are actually being influenced in this way, because the soul has been associated with material energy for a very long time. So it's picked up a lot of impressions, like basically unlimited impressions. And when the soul is moving around this environment with this body, everything in the environment triggers different impressions in that huge storehouse of impressions. And all those impressions work together to influence further movement of the soul in the right now. So there's no question of free thinking. All your thinking is actually based on impressions that are making influence upon you. So my answer to this person, if you want to be a free thinker, and this was very counterintuitive, he likes my answer by luck. I didn't think he would like it, but that's exactly why I said it, but he ended up appreciating it to some degree. As if you want to be a free thinker, you have to follow the free person. And that means a self-realized person, someone who is not just influenced by material energy. In other words, the saints that we're kind of hearing about in today's verses of Gita, who are influenced by another energy, a divine energy, by God himself, as Krishna is saying in these verses. And as I'm trying to indicate, their lives tend to indicate some higher divinity, if you accept that, if you accept the existence of such a possibility. Then if you want to be a free thinker, you have to follow the free man or woman, as it were. Those who are actually material forces that move souls in this world. So where does it come from? The soul's association with material nature is long-standing. So you cannot say it has a starting point. But somehow we've been associated with this material energy for a very long time. And then we're being moved by these material forces constantly. Yes. We're being controlled by material energy. Of course, you have the potential to break that control. So that's where your minute freedom comes into play. I'm just saying if they have this picture in here. They don't have, oh yes, I love this picture. This is a great picture. This picture is so nice. So this is Krishna, and he's in the transcendental world. And then you have the 3 gunas of nature, Prakriti. So you have Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, goodness, passion, ignorance. And then you have the jivas nicely being, how do you say?
Like the walls, and then
Yeah, they're just puppets in the hands of the modes of nature. This is such a good picture. This is a great image, huh? So this is us basically right now. When you're not truly spiritual, that's you. You like, I'm just following my heart. Now that's just that guna right there. She's playing with you. You think you're free, but you know how to go. So look at this. You think you're free. Do this. Do that. You're not. There's no freedom. Freedom is when you go beyond these gunas. That bright part is Krishna. So when you're in Krishna and that spiritual energy, so that spiritual energy can enter inside the material nature And if the souls connect with that energy, they can break free from the bonds of the tears, of the gunas. Otherwise, without that spiritual connection, then the freedom is basically not there, basically. All of us, we're being influenced by material forces. And to the degree we connect with spiritual energy, to that degree we can break that connection with the influence of material forces and be situated in a divine nature. Otherwise, freedom is very minimum, actually. That doesn't mean, of course, you like go and shoot someone. You say, the gunas did it. You can say like that, but the gunas will also take you to jail. So, of course, that is also true. There's truth to that also. Obviously, when working in court of law, but there's truth to that. So, therefore, it's a good idea to break free from the gunas because you don't know how you will be influenced. And someday you wake up, you're depressed. Someday you wake up, you're like very jolly. Someday you wake up, you're passionate. So much, we're being influenced all the time by these material forces. So it's a good idea to break free of them. And Krishna speaks twice in Bhagavad-Gita that the only way that's possible is by bhakti yoga. He says this twice in Bhagavad-Gita, in 7:14 and also in 14:26. He says that this is possible by bhakti yoga because bhakti yoga is part of the spiritual energy. So for those who accept such a possibility of a spiritual energy and its influence, then it behooves them to take advantage of that opportunity and get a little bit of freedom. Otherwise, there's no freedom. That is just a funny joke. Sadhus will laugh at you if you say that. Sadhu, holy people, if you say, I am free, then, it's a good one. Tell another joke. Where is the freedom? You weren't even free to say that statement. That statement is coming from some other influence where you feel you were oppressed and now you're being influenced by this impression to say that thing. Yeah, freedom is very less actually. So if you want to be free, this is very counterintuitive, but if you want to be free, you have to follow the free persons. Because then they will teach you how to be free. They teach bhakti yoga and all these things. That's what Krishna, iti matva bhajanti ma bhuta bhava samahita. But it's very hard for people to accept this nowadays. That to be free, you have to follow someone. Then you're not free. Bondage is ongoing. It's perpetual. So if we don't connect with spiritual energy, then our bondage it goes on until that connection is made. If not made in this life, it could be made in some future life. But there is no what's the saying? Silver lining in the clouds or light at the end. There is no light at the end of the tunnel unless you connect with spiritual persons. Just more tunnel. When you connect with spiritual persons, spiritual energy, then you can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. That's not meant to be. Again, this is not the best public relations class. It's not a public class. Well, it is a public class, but it's not a popular one. So. Yeah, even if it was popular, I would probably say the same thing in any case. But yeah, this bondage is perpetual. It's a very serious problem. Everyone's focused on Donald Trump and this thing and that thing, and animal rights this, and so many. You walk out in the street, so many people coming up to you. In the jail system, this, that, and other, they're giving me something, and the animals, this thing, and hey. So actually, this is the problem. That we have no freedom. We're in darkness of ignorance, and we're going to have to suffer perpetual death on account of our ignorance unless this problem is solved. So this is a real problem in spiritual societies or spiritual literatures. They want us to understand this is a huge problem. Yeah, you want to say something. One more thing you can say.
The material world seems to be so real.
Yes.
And all this that we are talking about, the minute you step out of, or even get on the street, it is real. It does exist.
Yes.
And these influences do come.
Yes.
Yes. The question is that, like that picture, there's Krishna and
the gunas.
Why do we go through this? Why are we ignorant in the first place? And why what's the purpose of this whole system? That's a very big question.
It's a huge.
If Krishna has the power and he's the creator, I'm sure the question is not why. The question is, what's the, like, why do we all in this room? We all go through such different experiences. I'm sure that we all have different things that we need to look at, reflect at. So where does this come from? Like, again, it comes from Krishna. What's the, like, why?
So I have to answer one of the biggest questions of life in 5 minutes. I don't think I have so much time for that. One thing that's hard to answer, one of the reasons why this question is almost impossible to answer, is because we're dealing with categories of existence that don't have beginnings. So when you ask a question, why, that means you're looking for a remote cause, right? But if something doesn't have a remote cause, then you can never answer the question, why. So when you're dealing with eternal categories, for example, Krishna, he's eternal. So the eternal means it doesn't have any beginning, it doesn't have an end. That's what it means to be eternal. So Krishna is an eternal category. So if he doesn't have a cause, you cannot ask what caused Krishna. Like, why does Krishna exist? I can never answer that question because he doesn't have a cause, at least according to Bhagavad-Gita, Vedanta. He doesn't have a cause. So there can be no answer to the question, why does Krishna exist? In a similar way, material energy, as we've been saying, material energy, spiritual energy, and the soul energy, they are also eternal. They have no beginning and they have no end. So you ask, well, why do they exist? Well, they don't have a cause. So I'm not going to really be able to answer that question. I can at most say, well, they exist because they come from Krishna. But he doesn't create them out of like nothing. They've always existed as he has always existed. So this is one of the reasons why this sort of question is very challenging to answer. And you'll discover this in practically any philosophy. There's always going to be this one point you get to where there's basically no answer for that particular sort of question. And this is why this particular question is basically impossible to answer, because you're looking for a remote cause for categories of things that don't have remote causes. So how do you answer a question like why? Now, so far so good. You understand why that's basically an impossible thing? Because when you say why, it means you're looking for the remote cause. But if there isn't a remote cause, you cannot answer that question why. Why does Krishna exist?
I get that for Krishna, but we are so different, and at the same time,
yes. Yeah, so we're getting there. Well, we're trying to get there. We're taking but first this point should be understood. I think you got this point. So just as the question why Krishna exists can't really be answered because he doesn't have a remote cause. So also the material world, the soul energy, and the spiritual, that question, that inability to answer that question also applies to them because they also don't have remote causes in the sense of having a beginning and having an end. So, well, why the souls are in this material energy having the variegated experiences that we are having? So it's very hard to answer that question also because the soul has been associated with material energy, we can say, for a very long time. Actually, to be precise, if you go to 1320 Bhagavad-Gita, the soul's association with material energy is without a beginning also. In other words, you cannot say when the soul first associated with material energy. That's impossible. If you could say that the soul first associated with material energy, then you can answer this question. But because you cannot say when the soul first started associating with material energy, that question also cannot be answered. Actually, there's a technical word for it. That's why I said I don't have time to go through. I think I'm going to do a little seminar on this. There's one word that's very technical and extremely important to understand in Vedanta philosophy in general. The word is anadi. And you'll find Krishna uses this word in 1320 Bhagavad Gita. And you'll find in Bhagavad Gita, as it is, a very interesting purport, Prabhupada kind of going around this, because it's a philosophical quandary. It's a little confusing. But the word anadi, adi means beginning, and anadi means without a beginning. So the jiva's association with the material energy is anadi. It means it doesn't have a beginning to it. So because it doesn't have a beginning, that's another way of saying it doesn't have a cause that you can search out. So therefore, trying to find the why to that question is also very hard. All we can understand is that the soul is associating with material energy. Ta-da! We are having variegated experiences. And basically, they all culminate in suffering sooner or later. And that's a problem for this consciousness. If it wasn't a problem, we wouldn't want to get out of it. So then the Shastra is advising us how we can solve that problem. But as far as how we began to associate with this energy, how we are forgetful of God, they said that's without beginning. You cannot really say. But having understood that the cause of the perpetuation of the association with material energy. So we cannot say exactly how that association started, but we can say why that association is perpetuated, life after life after life. That association is perpetuated because we are oblivious to God. So there's a technical term for that called Bhagavad-Gita, or basically means turned away from God. That is why this association is perpetuated. So although you cannot precisely answer why the association is there, because it's beginningless, but why it continues can be answered. Because the soul is oblivious to the existence of Bhagavan. It's called Bhagavad-Gita. So having identified that as the cause of the perpetuation of this existence, so then the solution is given, turn towards God, a simple solution. You're Bhagavad-Vimukha, you're turned away from God, so the solution is to turn towards God. So in other words, I'm saying the why the existence was perpetuated, that can be answered. But how it first started and all that cannot be answered because you're dealing with eternal categories. And the material energy is eternal, the soul is eternal, and their association, you cannot say when it started. It's anadi, is beginningless. I think I should do a seminar on this beginningless word because just yesterday, got into a nice sparring match with one of my friends on this very thing itself. Philosophical sparring, we weren't physically fighting. But, we were both very intensely into it, and the voices were getting louder and louder. And I remember, even today itself, we were in the elevator, just going up and down the elevator, even though it was so hot. The elevator was like, we were literally suffocating, but, well, what about this? Or, the voices are getting louder, and people were coming into the elevator, like, looking. Then they were getting off, and then we were still going. Then someone got back on the elevator after coming to take darshan and told them they were still there. It's a philosophical quandary. It's a little bit of it's actually not too confusing once you understand some of these technical terms. But it's something, until you kind of sit with it for some time, it can be a little bit daunting, actually. Even this concept of eternality is actually very bewildering. To think that you've always existed, and you will always exist forevermore. You can't even think about that right now because, yeah, exactly. What does that even mean? Because we're conditioned by time. So we think in terms of past, present, and future. So you cannot even really think about having always existed. There was never, Krishna himself says, right? 2:12 Bhagavad-Gita. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these beings in the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. If you just sit with that one verse of Bhagavad Gita, is bewildering. I always existed. I did an exercise one time, I don't recommend it, but I did an exercise one time where I was like looking at myself in the mirror, looking at my eyes in the mirror, and meditating on how I've always existed. And I did it for about 5 minutes, but I could feel the screws loosening in the head. So I said, nah, Jai, stop. I need the screws to be tight because I can't be going crazy. I'm too young to go crazy. So I don't exactly recommend this particular exercise, but I was trying to really grasp the idea of being eternal. But it was more or less impossible because I'm conditioned by time. I think in terms of past, present, and future. So even to think about something being eternal is actually very inconceivable. I mean, we just drop the word like it's nothing. This is eternal, that is eternal. But actually that one concept itself is very boggling, mind-boggling, when you're in a world that has past, present, and future. Anyway, having said that, if you sit with these philosophical concepts long enough, you actually start to get a kind of an intuition I don't know how else, that's not the best word to use, but you kind of start to get, I'm going to use the word intuition, not the best word, but you kind of start to get an insight that's not purely intellectual. It's not that it's devoid of intellect. I'm obviously explaining things very intellectually. So it's not devoid of intelligence, but the insight is something that's a little bit not just intellectual based. You get a sort of a trans-intellectual insight to some of these philosophical quandaries. But you have to sit with them for some time. You have to hear it quite a bit. And then you start to, you just kind of start to get it a little bit. That's not the best way of expressing it, but that's my personal experience, and I heard it like this from some sadhus. In any case, why we are going on in this material energy, that is very clear. We are oblivious to Bhagavan. So if you say, well, how did it start? Why? It doesn't have a beginning. So I cannot exactly answer that question. Because things that don't have beginnings don't have causes in the cause and effect sense. So you would not be able to answer that question. But I know why, I know the cause of my perpetuation in this existence. So that can be solved by turning towards God. So that's my attempt at answering one of life's biggest quandaries, and okay, it took 10 minutes. It is not complete, obviously, but what can be done? So we'll stop there. We're way over time today. Thank you all very much. Hari Om Tat Sat. Let me say Hare Krishna. Shoreline, yes, that's why I look at shoreline. Yeah, shoreline, there, shoreline. Yeah, Danielle gave it to me. I didn't see shoreline. Thank you, Danielle. Huh? She Googled it? Oh, really? Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.